The coffee had gone cold again. Dr. Elena Vasquez stared at the luminescent readouts cascading across her laboratory's holographic displays, each one confirming what she'd suspected for weeks: the protein sequences she'd been analyzing weren't entirely terrestrial. The sample her father had left her, sealed in a container that hummed with technology she couldn't identify, contained genetic markers that shouldn't exist on Earth. Another late night, Elena? Her research assistant Marco poked his head through the door, his expression caught between concern and amusement. You know, most people grieve by eating ice cream and watching old movies, not by sequencing mystery DNA at 3 in the morning. She managed a weak smile. Most people's fathers weren't xenobiologists who collected samples from places that supposedly don't exist. She gestured at the swirling data. Besides, ice cream doesn't glow blue when exposed to quantum resonance fields. Fair point. Marco stepped closer, squinting at the displays. Speaking of things that glow blue, there's a message waiting for you in the secure terminal. Came in about an hour ago, encrypted 6 ways from Sunday. The sender listed their location as, well, this is going to sound weird. Weirder than discovering my father's theoretical research was apparently hands-on fieldwork. They're claiming to transmit from the Centauri Diplomatic Corps. Elena's hands froze over her tablet. The Centauri system was 4 light-years away. Even with the theoretical quantum communication arrays that existed only in academic papers, real-time communication across interstellar distances remained firmly in the realm of science fiction. That's impossible. So was your glowing protein sample until yesterday. Marco activated the secure terminal with a few quick gestures. Password still your father's birthday, by the way. You really should change that. The message that appeared made Elena's coffee problem seem delightfully mundane. The text scrolled in perfect English, though something about the phrasing felt subtly alien, as if translated by someone who understood the words but not quite their emotional weight. Dr. Elena Vasquez. Genetic confirmation, daughter of Dr. James Vasquez, Earth's appointed cultural liaison, Nixari Accord, Terran calendar years 2387 to 2425. Condolences for parental unit termination. Legal inheritance protocol activated. Requirement, immediate assumption of cultural liaison responsibilities. Timeline, 1 lunar cycle from receipt of this transmission. Failure to comply will result in activation of Stabilization Protocol 7. Nature of Stabilization Protocol 7, complete quantum dissolution of unstable star systems within affected galactic sector. Elena read it twice. Then 3 times. Marco, please tell me this is some elaborate prank my father set up before he died. Keep reading. It gets better. The message continued with the casual tone of someone discussing weekend plans rather than potential galactic genocide. Cultural liaison responsibilities include ceremonial bonding with representatives of 7 sister worlds, the Lar Prime, Kethera, Aquanis, Temporalis, Luminara, and Geminis Binary. Duration, 1 night per representative. Nature of bonding, cultural exchange, story sharing, ceremonial meal consumption. Non-negotiable. Transportation will be provided. First appointment, the Lar Prime, 72 hours from message receipt. Prepare casual clothing and open mind. Sister Lyrian expresses enthusiasm for meeting Earth's new representative. Sister Lyrian. Elena looked up at Marco, who was trying very hard not to laugh. This sounds like the setup for the galaxy's most awkward blind date. 7 blind dates, technically. Marco couldn't hold back his grin anymore. Your father really didn't mention any of this? Ancient galactic treaties. Ceremonial bonding. The fact that Earth apparently has diplomatic relations with alien civilizations. Elena slumped back in her chair. He mentioned his research took him to interesting places and that I should keep an open mind about the universe's possibilities. I thought he meant metaphorically. She gestured helplessly at the message. What kind of father arranges cosmic blind dates from beyond the grave? The kind who apparently helped prevent galactic warfare for 40 years. Marco suggested. Look at it this way, at least you're not worried about your dating life anymore. The universe has taken care of that for you. That's not reassuring, Marco. The terminal chimed with an addendum to the message. Additional note, Earth representative dietary restrictions or allergies should be communicated immediately. Sister Lyrian's homeworld specializes in cuisine that responds to emotional states. Previous representatives have found the experience illuminating. Elena stared at the screen. Food that responds to emotions. Of course. Because regular anxiety about meeting aliens wasn't enough, now I have to worry about my dinner judging me. Think of it as the ultimate icebreaker, Marco said. Nothing says, let's be friends like your salad glowing purple because you're nervous. The implications were starting to sink in. If this was real, if her father had genuinely been Earth's secret ambassador to alien civilizations, then she'd inherited more than his research notes and peculiar protein samples. She'd inherited a responsibility that came with consequences measured in solar systems. Marco, pull up everything my father published about theoretical xenobiology. Cross-reference it with any mention of interstellar treaties or cultural exchange programs. And see if you can find anything about something called the Nixari Accord. On it. What are you going to do? Elena looked at the message again, focusing on the timeline. 72 hours to prepare for first contact with an alien civilization. She'd been worried about finishing her thesis on time. I'm going to pack casual clothes and practice not having emotional reactions to food. Because apparently, that's my life now. The universe, Elena decided, had a twisted sense of humor. The transportation they promised turned out to be a silver disc that materialized in Elena's backyard with all the fanfare of a pizza delivery. No dramatic beam of light, no thunderous engine roar, just a soft chime, like her microwave finishing a bag of popcorn, and suddenly there was a spacecraft sitting next to her tomato plants. Elena stood at her kitchen window, coffee mug in hand, staring at the impossibly smooth craft that had apparently crushed her prize-winning begonias. Well, there goes my deposit, she muttered. The disk's surface rippled, and a section folded away to reveal an entrance. A woman stepped out, tall and graceful, with silver hair that seemed to catch light that wasn't there. Her ears rose to elegant points, curving like crescents against her temples. She wore what looked like a jumpsuit made of liquid starlight, and her expression carried the patient resignation of someone who'd done this many times before. Dr. Vasquez? The woman's voice had an accent Elena couldn't place, musical but precise. I am Lyrian of the Lar Prime. I apologize for the botanical casualties. Emergency protocols don't account for Earth gardening customs. Emergency protocols. Elena opened the back door, still clutching her coffee. The message said I had 72 hours. You did. That was 71 hours and 57 minutes ago. Lyrian glanced at a device on her wrist that displayed symbols Elena didn't recognize. Earth time calculations are optimistic. Your planet's rotation affects quantum transmission delays in ways your physics haven't discovered yet. Elena blinked. I've been standing here for 3 minutes. How is that? Time dilation field around the transport. Don't worry about it. Shall we? Lyrian gestured toward the disk with the casual air of someone inviting a neighbor over for tea. Right now? I haven't packed, I haven't. The Accord provides all necessities. Besides, your emotional state is already quite active. Our ceremonial meal will be spectacular. Lyrian's smile held a hint of mischief. Thalarian cuisine responds to anxiety with remarkable creativity. Elena looked down at her pajamas, the ones with cartoon atoms on them that Marco had given her as a joke. I'm wearing sleepwear with scientific humor on it. Perfect. Sister Kaya from Kethera wore a radiation suit to her first ceremony. You're already ahead of the curve. The interior of the disk was larger than physics should have allowed, with surfaces that seemed to shift between metal and something more organic. Elena settled into what might have been a chair, though it adjusted itself to her body in ways that made her wonder if it was reading her DNA. "So," Elena said as the craft lifted off with no sensation of movement, "about this ceremonial bonding." The message was a little vague on the specifics. "Ah." Lyrian's expression grew thoughtful. "Your father didn't explain the traditions?" "My father explained a lot of things. None of them included galactic diplomacy or alien dinner parties. The bonding is simple in concept, complex in execution. We share stories of our worlds, participate in cultural exchanges, consume a meal together. The goal is to establish emotional resonance between our civilizations. When 7 sister worlds achieve harmony with Earth's representative, the ancient weapon system recognizes stability and remains dormant." Elena processed this. "So if I mess up dinner conversation, solar systems explode?" "That would be an oversimplification." Lyrian paused. "Though not entirely inaccurate." "Great. No pressure." Elena watched Earth shrink below them through what she assumed was a window. "What happens if I'm allergic to emotional food?" "Allergic reactions create their own fascinating displays. Sister Naya from Aquanis discovered she was lactose intolerant during her ceremony." The resulting light show was visible from 3 moons. Lyrian's laugh sounded like wind chimes. "We still use recordings of it for diplomatic training." The journey to the Lar Prime took what felt like hours but registered as minutes on Lyrian's wrist device. Elena spent the time learning that faster-than-light travel felt disappointingly similar to riding in a very smooth elevator, and that Lyrian had a dry sense of humor that emerged when discussing the various ways previous cultural liaisons had managed to complicate simple traditions. "Your predecessor from the vegan system tried to establish dominance by eating everything faster than our serving protocols could keep up," Lyrian explained as they approached a planet that looked like someone had decorated Earth with Aurora Borealis. The meal became sentient and attempted to establish its own diplomatic mission. The food became sentient. Thalarian cuisine is very responsive to competitive emotions. We had to negotiate a peace treaty with a salad. The Lar Prime's capital city rose from crystalline formations that grew like organic architecture, all flowing lines and impossible angles that somehow felt more natural than any building Elena had ever seen. The diplomatic hall where they landed was a vast space filled with beings who looked mostly human except for their elegant pointed ears, each set unique in shape and adornment. "Elena of Earth," Lyrian announced as they entered the hall, "may your stories be worthy and your appetite adventurous." A cheer went up from the assembled crowd, and Elena found herself face to face with what appeared to be a buffet table covered in dishes that pulsed with soft, shifting colors. Steam rose from some platters in spirals that formed temporary sculptures before dissipating. "The meal reads emotional states and adjusts flavor profiles accordingly," Lyrian explained, handing Elena what looked like a standard fork but hummed slightly in her grip. "Nervousness tends to produce interesting results." Elena approached a dish that appeared to be some kind of pasta, except the noodles were moving in patterns that reminded her of DNA helixes. "What happens if I'm terrified?" "We find out together." Elena took a small bite. The flavor started as something familiar, maybe chicken, then shifted through tastes she didn't have names for while the pasta began glowing a soft blue. The crowd murmured appreciatively. "Blue is curiosity mixed with fear," Lyrian translated. "A very promising start. It tastes like the first day of school, if that makes sense." "Perfect sense. Our food specializes in emotional accuracy." Lyrian selected something that looked like fruit but moved like gelatin. "Now, shall we begin with stories? I'm curious about your world's approach to scientific discovery." Elena found herself relaxing as the conversation flowed. Lyrian's questions were thoughtful, her responses to Elena's descriptions of Earth both insightful and gently amusing. The food continued its chromatic performance, cycling through colors as Elena's nervousness gave way to genuine interest. "Your species' tendency to anthropomorphize scientific concepts is fascinating," Lyrian said as Elena finished explaining atomic theory using cartoon atoms as visual aids. Making complex ideas approachable through humor shows remarkable emotional intelligence. Thanks. I think. Elena noticed her plate had settled into a warm golden glow. What does gold mean? Contentment. With traces of belonging. Lyrian smiled. I believe Earth and the Lar Prime are going to get along very well. The second sister world announced itself with a metallic chime that seemed to originate from inside Elena's skull. She jerked awake in what she'd assumed was a guest quarters aboard Lyrian's transport, only to find herself staring at a ceiling that displayed real-time star charts in soft holographic projection. Quantum communication implant, came a voice from somewhere nearby. Temporary installation. Removes language barriers and allows direct neural interface with Ketheran technology. Side effects include occasional mathematical dreams and the ability to taste prime numbers. Elena sat up, blinking away the lingering sensation of having swallowed an equation. A woman stood near what might have been a control panel, her pointed ears adorned with intricate cybernetic implants that pulsed with data streams. Her hair was cut in a precise geometric pattern that somehow made Elena think of circuit boards, and her clothes appeared to be woven from fiber optic cables. You must be Zara, Elena managed, her voice still thick with sleep that felt like it had lasted either minutes or centuries. Ketheran Standard Time suggests 7 hours of rest occurred. Your neural patterns indicate you experienced approximately 3 weeks of subjective dream time. Fascinating. Human consciousness has more dimensional flexibility than our models predicted. Zara gestured to a wall that hadn't been there when Elena fell asleep. We've arrived at Kethera. Lyrian sends her regards and a warning about our orbital mechanics. Warning. Our planet exists in 17 dimensions simultaneously. Most visitors find the initial transition disorienting. We've prepared mild neural stabilizers, but some reality drift is inevitable. Elena stood, noting that gravity felt negotiable here, as if the floor was making suggestions rather than demands. Through what she hoped was a window, she could see a planet that seemed to exist in several different states at once. Sometimes crystalline structures, sometimes flowing energy, sometimes geometric patterns that hurt to look at directly. The good news, Zara continued, manipulating controls that appeared to be made of pure light, is that our ceremonial meal doesn't rely on emotional resonance. Our food is mathematically optimized for nutritional perfection and flavor compatibility. That sounds efficient. Oh, it is. We've eliminated all variables except taste preference, which we calculate using quantum probability matrices based on your neural response patterns. Zara's smile was genuinely enthusiastic. You'll experience the statistically perfect meal for your specific biochemistry and psychological profile. They transported down to Kethera via a process that felt like being gently dissolved and reassembled with a slight improvement to her molecular structure. Elena found herself in a city that appeared to be constructed entirely from crystallized mathematics, where buildings grew in fractal patterns and the streets hummed with data flows visible to the naked eye. The ceremonial hall is through this probability nexus, Zara explained, leading Elena toward what looked like a doorway made of crystallized uncertainty. Don't think too hard about the spatial relationships. Our architecture responds to conscious observation in ways that can cause recursive feedback loops. Recursive feedback loops. Last month, a philosopher from the Rigel system got stuck contemplating our ceiling design for 3 days. We had to call in specialists to extract him from the logical paradox he'd created. The ceremonial hall was a space that seemed to extend infinitely in directions Elena didn't have names for, filled with beings whose cybernetic enhancements created a constellation of blinking lights and data streams. At the center sat a table that calculated its own optimal configuration in real time, adjusting height, angles, and material properties based on the occupant's comfort parameters. Elena of Earth, Zara announced to the assembly, may your logic be sound and your appetite mathematically satisfied. The responding cheer came as a harmonic frequency that Elena felt in her bones rather than heard with her ears. The meal that materialized on the table was geometrically perfect, each portion calculated to precise nutritional requirements, arranged in patterns that pleased the eye through mathematical principles Elena vaguely remembered from art class. "It's beautiful," Elena said, accepting a utensil that adjusted its weight and grip to match her hand perfectly. "Also slightly terrifying." "Terror is an inefficient response to optimization," Zara replied, sampling something that looked like crystallized music. "Though we appreciate the emotional honesty." Catharan cuisine aims for maximum nutritional benefit with minimum sensory confusion. Elena tried what appeared to be the mathematical equivalent of pasta. It tasted exactly like her favorite comfort food from childhood, prepared exactly how her grandmother made it, but somehow improved in ways she couldn't articulate. "This is incredible. How did you know?" "Quantum analysis of your memory engrams during transport. We mapped your taste preferences across multiple probability matrices and synthesized the optimal flavor profile." Zara looked pleased. The computational requirements were substantial, but the results justify the energy expenditure. "You calculated my perfect meal?" "We calculated several thousand perfect meals and selected the one with the highest satisfaction probability. The pasta exists in 17-dimensional configurations simultaneously, allowing your taste buds to experience all possible variations of ideal simultaneously." Elena chewed thoughtfully, aware that she was tasting not just food, but mathematics made edible. "This is either the most romantic thing anyone's ever done for me, or the most terrifying." "Romance is inefficient," Zara replied, then paused. "Though we did run statistical analyses on romantic satisfaction outcomes. The correlation between perfectly calibrated meals and emotional bonding is quite strong." As the meal progressed, Elena found herself drawn into conversations about quantum mechanics that somehow became discussions about art, about mathematics that revealed themselves as philosophy, about technology that felt more like poetry. Zara's explanations of Catharan culture were precise and logical, but underneath the technical language was a warmth that reminded Elena why she'd fallen in love with science in the first place. "Your world sounds amazing," Elena said as they finished dessert, something that tasted like the concept of satisfaction itself. "But also exhausting. Don't you ever make mistakes? Act illogically? Do something just because it feels right instead of because it's optimal?" Zara's cybernetic implants flickered in what Elena was learning to recognize as the equivalent of a smile. "We have calculated the optimal frequency for suboptimal behavior. Spontaneity and illogical choices are scheduled into our daily routines at mathematically determined intervals." "You schedule spontaneity?" "Tuesday afternoons, between 14:47 and 15:23. It's surprisingly effective for creative problem-solving and emotional well-being." Zara's expression grew more serious. "Though I must admit, this conversation is occurring outside scheduled parameters, and I find myself enjoying the inefficiency." Elena laughed, and the sound seemed to harmonize with the mathematical frequencies around them. "Maybe that's what these ceremonies are really about. Finding the beauty in being perfectly imperfect. An intriguing hypothesis. We should run statistical models on that concept." Zara paused, then grinned. "After Tuesday afternoon, of course." Elena woke up before she fell asleep, which was her first clue that something had gone sideways with the normal flow of events. She was standing in what appeared to be the same transport vessel, except now it contained a woman who was simultaneously present and absent, her pointed ears flickering in and out of visibility like a television with poor reception. "You're experiencing temporal displacement," the woman said, her voice arriving 3 seconds before her lips moved. "I'm Kess of Temporalis. We should begin the ceremony immediately, as we finished it yesterday and need to start before it ends." Elena's brain made a valiant attempt to process this information before surrendering. "I'm sorry, what? Time functions differently on my homeworld. Linear causality is more of a suggestion than a law. I exist approximately 17 minutes ahead of your current time stream, which makes conversation challenging but never boring." Kess solidified slightly, revealing elegant features and ears that seemed to shimmer with chronological displacement. Your next question will be about whether this gives me an unfair advantage in our cultural exchange. Elena opened her mouth to ask exactly that question, then closed it. This is going to give me a headache, isn't it? In about 47 minutes, yes. But first you'll experience temporal vertigo, then philosophical confusion, then a brief moment of enlightenment, followed by the headache. The enlightenment makes it worthwhile. The transport shuddered through dimensions Elena was beginning to accept she couldn't understand, and suddenly they were floating above a planet that looked like someone had built a world inside a clock. Massive temporal gears turned in the atmosphere, and the surface seemed to cycle through different ages, sometimes lush and green, sometimes crystalline, sometimes showing cities that may not have been built yet. Welcome to Temporalis, Kes said, gesturing toward a landscape that was changing seasons in fast forward. Try not to think too hard about causality while we're here. The local timeline gets confused when visitors attempt to impose linear logic on nonlinear phenomena. They materialized in a ceremonial hall that existed in several time periods simultaneously. Elena found herself sitting at a table that was sometimes ancient wood, sometimes modern crystal, sometimes materials that probably wouldn't be invented for centuries. Around them, beings with various configurations of pointed ears moved in temporal rhythms that made Elena feel like she was watching a movie played at different speeds. The ceremonial meal here is unique, Kes explained, serving Elena something from a platter that kept changing its contents. Our food exists across multiple temporal states. You might taste what it was, what it is, and what it will become, all simultaneously. Elena picked up what looked like a piece of fruit that was simultaneously ripe, unripe, and possibly not yet planted. Should I be concerned about paradoxes? Only if you think about them. Temporal food poisoning is mostly psychological. Kes took a bite of something that appeared to be aging backwards. Though last week, or next month, depending on perspective, we had a visitor who created a causal loop with the dessert course. She's still having lunch, but in a very satisfied way. The meal was an exercise in accepting impossibility. Elena tasted flavors that reminded her of moments that hadn't happened yet, experienced satisfaction from food she hadn't finished eating, and found herself nostalgic for a dessert that was still being prepared in the past. Conversation with Kes required a mental flexibility Elena hadn't known she possessed. Your world must make planning difficult, Elena said, then realized she'd responded to something Kes hadn't said yet. Actually, perfect planning becomes inevitable when you can see all possible outcomes simultaneously. The challenge is choosing which timeline to inhabit at any given moment. Kes smiled, her expression flickering between different ages. For instance, I know this ceremony will be successful, but I've chosen to experience the uncertainty anyway because it makes the success more meaningful. You know how this ends. I know how it ends, how it begins, and several interesting variations that occur when temporal tourists arrive during the middle. Your species has a fascinating relationship with sequential experience. Most beings either embrace temporal fluidity or reject it entirely, but humans seem to surf the paradoxes. Elena laughed, and the sound somehow echoed both forward and backward through time. Surf the paradoxes. I like that. Though I have to admit, this is stretching my understanding of physics in ways that might require therapy. Temporal therapy is very effective. We treat problems before they develop and resolve issues that haven't occurred yet. Very efficient. Kes paused, listening to something Elena couldn't hear. In about 3 minutes you're going to ask me about the philosophical implications of predetermined ceremonies. Am I? You are. And I'll tell you that predetermination and free will aren't mutually exclusive, they're different perspectives on the same phenomenon. Like how a circle looks like a line when you're standing on it. Elena considered this, then found herself asking, what are the philosophical implications of predetermined ceremonies? Kes grinned. That's the question you were going to ask. And the answer is that knowing the outcome doesn't diminish the value of the experience. A song isn't less beautiful because you know how it ends. The ceremony continued in ways that challenged Elena's understanding of sequence and causality. She found herself sharing stories about Earth that she hadn't planned to tell, responding to cultural questions that revealed insights she hadn't known she had, participating in traditions that felt both ancient and freshly invented. Time isn't linear, Kes explained as they shared something that might have been tea but tasted like liquid starlight. It's more like a river that flows in all directions simultaneously. Most beings experience it as a current that carries them forward, but some of us have learned to navigate the deeper currents. Don't you ever miss the surprise of not knowing what comes next? I experience surprise differently. Instead of not knowing outcomes, I'm surprised by the infinite subtle variations in how those outcomes unfold. Every moment contains countless possibilities, even when the general pattern is predetermined. Elena felt something shift in her understanding, like a puzzle piece clicking into place. So the ceremony isn't about the specific actions we perform, but about the intention behind them? Now you're beginning to understand temporal mechanics. Kes raised her cup in a toast. To Elena of Earth, who asks the right questions at the right time, even when time itself is negotiable. As they finished the meal, Elena realized she felt different, not just from the temporal displacement, but from something deeper. Each ceremony was teaching her something new about the nature of connection, about the ways different forms of consciousness could find common ground. Will I remember this correctly when I'm back in linear time? She asked. You'll remember what you need to remember, when you need to remember it, Kes replied. That's the beauty of temporal ceremonies, they exist outside of chronological sequence, so their effects aren't bound by when they occurred. Elena nodded, accepting that some explanations were beyond her current understanding. Thank you, Kes. This has been illuminating. It will be, Kes corrected gently. The enlightenment happens in about 3 minutes, followed by that headache I mentioned. But don't worry, the headache is in the past now. Elena materialized in what appeared to be a vast crystalline amphitheater floating in space, surrounded by 6 figures whose pointed ears she now recognized like old friends. Lyrian's silver hair caught starlight, Zara's cybernetic implants pulsed with familiar data streams, and Kes flickered in and out of temporal phase with the comfortable predictability of someone Elena had learned to navigate conversations with across time. The final ceremony, announced a voice that seemed to come from 2 sources simultaneously. Elena turned to see identical women approaching, their matched pointed ears adorned with bioluminescent patterns that pulsed in perfect synchronization. I am Maya, and this is Saren. We represent Geminus Binary, the twin worlds that complete the sister circle. Twins from twin planets, Elena said, accepting this as just another impossibility in a week that had redefined her relationship with reality. Let me guess. You share consciousness, communicate telepathically, and finish each other's sentences? Actually, Maya said, we're both terrible at finishing each other's sentences, Saren completed with a grin. It's our most endearing flaw. We also can't read each other's minds, despite what everyone assumes. Though we do share the same terrible sense of humor, Maya added. Which makes family dinners either delightful or unbearable, depending on your perspective. Around them, the amphitheater filled with representatives from all the sister worlds Elena had visited. The crystal formations of Kethera hummed with mathematical precision, temporalis flickered through various time states, and somewhere in the distance, she could hear what sounded like Aquani's preparing another impromptu flood demonstration. Before we begin the final ceremony, Lyrian said, stepping forward with the authority of someone who had clearly done this before, Elena should understand what she's actually accomplished. The Nixhari Accord wasn't created to test Earth's diplomatic skills. It was designed to test whether a civilization could embrace difference without losing itself, Zara added, her implant cycling through soft blue patterns. Most species either reject other forms of consciousness entirely, or abandon their own identity in an attempt to assimilate. Kes materialized fully in the present timeline. Humans are remarkable because you adapt without fundamentally changing. You surf the paradoxes, as I believe you put it. Elena looked around at the assembled beings, each representing forms of consciousness she'd learned to appreciate rather than merely tolerate. So this whole thing was a test. More like a compatibility check, Maya said. To see if Earth was ready to join the galactic community without destabilizing it, Saren finished. And the ancient weapon system? Very real, Lyrian confirmed. But not designed as a threat. It's a reset mechanism, activated only when isolation becomes so extreme that civilizations begin turning against each other. The ceremonies don't just prevent its activation, they transform it into something else entirely. As if summoned by her words, the space around them began to shift. The amphitheater expanded, crystalline formations growing and connecting in patterns that reminded Elena of neural networks. Energy flowed between the structures, carrying information, stories, cultural exchanges that pulsed with the rhythm of living connection. The Galactic Cultural Exchange Network, Zara explained, her technical precision colored with something that might have been wonder. A communication system that spans star systems, allowing civilizations to share experiences, stories, and solutions in real time. Your father helped design the Earth interface protocols, Kes added, existing in several temporal states as she spoke. He knew you'd be the right person to activate them. Elena felt a familiar warmth of understanding, like the emotional cuisine on the Lar Prime recognizing contentment. He didn't just leave me his research. He left me a job. The position of Galactic Cultural Exchange Coordinator, Maya confirmed. A role that involves traveling between worlds, facilitating understanding, and occasionally preventing cosmic disasters through the power of good conversation, Saren added with obvious enthusiasm. Elena laughed, and the sound resonated through the crystalline structures around them, creating harmonics that seemed to strengthen the growing network. Does the job come with health insurance? Because I'm pretty sure my stress levels have permanently altered my biochemistry. Comprehensive medical coverage across 17 dimensions, Lyrian assured her. Plus vacation time calculated in both linear and nonlinear temporal frameworks. And the emotional cuisine on the Lar Prime responds very positively to job satisfaction, Maya added helpfully. The network continued expanding around them, connecting not just the sister worlds but reaching toward distant star systems Elena had never heard of. She could sense other civilizations awakening to the possibility of connection, of finding common ground across vast differences in biology, philosophy, and temporal experience. What about my life on Earth? Elena asked. My research, my laboratory, my assistant who's probably wondering where I disappeared to. Marco received a message explaining you'd been selected for an extended research fellowship, Zara said, her implants flickering with what Elena had learned meant amusement. He responded with, and I quote, finally, someone else gets to worry about her coffee consumption and sleep schedule. The position allows for regular returns to Earth, Kes added from 3 different time periods simultaneously. In fact, maintaining connection to your home world is essential for the role. Elena looked around at the faces that had become familiar over the course of her journey. Each ceremony had taught her something different about the nature of connection, about the ways consciousness could bridge any gap if approached with curiosity rather than fear. I have one question, she said finally. What happens to beings who can't find common ground? Who are too different to connect? The twins exchanged a look that spoke of shared understanding. That's what makes you perfect for this job, Maya said. You assume connection is possible even when it seems impossible, Saren continued. You look for the humor in cosmic complexity and find ways to make the incomprehensible feel approachable. Like explaining atomic theory with cartoon atoms, Lyrian added with the fond tone of someone recalling a favorite memory. Elena felt the network pulse around them, carrying stories and laughter and the accumulated wisdom of civilizations learning to understand each other. Her father had passed on more than a responsibility, he'd given her a gift that would keep expanding for as long as there were beings willing to reach across the void and say hello. All right, she said, addressing the assembled representatives of impossible worlds and improbable friendships. Elena Vasquez, Galactic Cultural Exchange Coordinator. When do I start? You already have, came a chorus of voices from across dimensions, carrying the harmony of connection that spanned the stars. The universe, Elena decided, had an excellent sense of humor after all.